Okay, panelists, please come and join us. Okay, willkommen, welcome. My name is Emma Warren. I'm a writer, and part of the reason I'm here, I think, is because I wrote a book called Make Some Space, which was about the importance of places where we can gather together to hear music and dance. And I wrote a smaller book after that called Document Your Culture, which tried to advocate for the importance of telling the stories of these spaces, because they're precious and we don't always have the right language to talk about them and to explain why they're important. So I'm very, very happy to be here talking about music and dancing and mental health with our wonderful panelists. We were due to be 4 people, but unfortunately Vivian Koch is ill and she can't make it, although we were blessed with some of her music earlier, and no doubt we'll be hearing some of her music as we go on. So I'd like to introduce our panelists very briefly, because I think it's nicer to get to know someone through the medium of conversation than me reading you out their CV. So I'm going to tell you that we have 2 dancers, Damon Frost and Alvin Colantes, who come from different dance forms, which we'll be finding out more about. And we have Melissa Salinas Rannenberg, who brings her expertise as a psychologist and body worker, and she'll be giving us some, we're going to be getting a lot of grounding, but we'll be getting some grounding in some of the expertise that she knows about from her studies and from the studies. The only other thing I should say is that we will probably speak for about 50 minutes, and then afterwards we'll extend the conversation to all of you. Please feel free to share comments, questions, observations. You know, we are all here in the room together, and if you have a thought, chances are someone else might also like to know the answer. And so we begin. I have one question to start with that I would like all of you to answer. There are some things I want to know to do with your individual expertise, but the first thing from all of you is, can you please tell us about a dance floor that was a very positive space for you? And by dance floor, I don't just mean the club or a nightclub or a disco. I'm talking about anywhere where we gathered to dance together to music. Melissa, would you like to start? Yeah, it should be on. It should be on.
Okay, hi. Okay, so thank you. And I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, well, since you asked me this question an hour ago, I've been thinking about it. And I think it would be a room where I learned, I did a study as a breathing and voice therapist, and we had a room where we were supposed to do body work. And we also had a free improvisation dance class, and this was the first contact for me with improvisation, and it was allowed to do anything that felt well. So this was a very good experience for me.
Okay, that sounds like a lovely room to be in. Damon, what's yours?
Hello. Hey. Yeah, I remember very distinctly when I was 4 years old that my parents had a party at their house, and it was time for me to go to bed. But I remember like looking out of the doorway and seeing people just really enjoying themselves. And I remember hearing the laughter and the fun that was happening over there. And I remember just being fascinated by it. So that's major for me.
It's funny, I'm in the process of finishing writing a book about dancing, and the number of the people I've spoken to tell me as a child they remember being in their bedclothes and looking through the banister or into a room and seeing the adults dancing and realizing something about adult life that they were ready for, but they weren't yet able to access. That's a lovely image, thank you. Alvin, what would be yours?
Hello. For me, when I was young, me and my family, we used to go to my grandma's house for her birthday, and the cousins would arrange a little dance number to open up the space and kind of like lure all the adults in to dance and celebrate. So for me, I will always remember the times every summer to make dances and warm up the space for all the uncles and aunts to dance with us. So that was, really, really, meaningful.
I think family parties are just a really underestimated cultural space. You know, they might not seem very important. Oh, it's just people dancing. But actually they contain so much knowledge and information, as does the body. And maybe Damon first, could you tell us something about what you know about the body as a source of knowledge or information?
Excellent question. Well, there was a time in the 80s, I'm 57 now, so like in the mid 80s, I'm like right in the middle of the hip hop phenomenon, and I'm trying to figure out what moves I'm gonna do and I'm gonna show. And what would happen is I would have the burden of having to remember things. And it's like, okay, what am I gonna do now? I already did that, I can't do it twice. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And what I noticed is through music and just going out there and just allowing it to happen, my body would remember things that my mind wouldn't. So there's an incredible physical memory that is going on beyond my own conscious decision making. So for me, that's a really big awakening moment for me.
I feel like over the last few years, I've also become able to understand my body as a thinking brain in its entirety, rather than it just being all my thinking happening here. Alvin, what can you tell us about the body as a store of information or knowledge?
Yeah, I was trained in dance. I went to a dance program, and it was really rigid and structured. So I had to learn how to deprogram and how to see dance as an expressive tool to liberate my body.
Were you trained in contemporary dance?
I was trained in contemporary and modern dance, particularly Graham technique in Canada. But then when I discovered Gaga as a movement language, it tapped into a lot of my imagination, expressiveness, and I kind of used Gaga, this work, in the clubs, because the clubs for me became a space where I can just let things out with no judgment and just like allow myself to fully express everything maybe that was inside me. So that became a very powerful kind of tool for me to use my body as a engine for expression and liberation.
Expression and liberation. I feel like there are two bits of clarification that we need from you there. One is about what kind of clubs are you talking about, and the other one is what is Gaga?
Oh, what is Gaga? Maybe I can go with Gaga. So Gaga is a movement language founded by Ohad Naharin from Israel. He was the artistic director of Batsheva Dance Company, which is one of the most prominent dance companies in the contemporary dance scene. And he really progressed the scene because contemporary dance was always viewed as, structure, certain type of technique. So with Gaga, we use already information inside the body. So tapping into the scope of sensations that we can explore, the range, our imagination, and how that colors the way we create form or tap into our stamina, that we don't need to overproduce the body. We can just tap into where we are and listening from that place, and then tap into availability, what the body can do and where it can go. So it has this level of freedom that it, I think, taps into this possibility to create and to color.
There's a Netflix episode, isn't there?
Yes.
Is it called Move, the series?
There's an episode about Ohad called Move, and there's also a special documentary called Mr. Gaga on Netflix, if you'd like to know more.
So interesting that your formal training took you to someone who was formally trained, who was then involved in deprogramming
Yes.
and doing it very differently.
He also came from a very structured technique. He went to Juilliard and danced for Martha Graham. And so when he got injured, that's when the language of Gaga started to evolve. Like, how can I use my body to heal? And really listening to how things can move inside me so I can, heal more and more instead of pushing myself to where the body needs because of, disposition as a dancer or, yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm currently carrying a little knee injury picked up by getting very ridiculously into Argentine tango. And so I'm going to be using some Gaga to try and heal my poor knee, which is not very happy with me at the moment.
I wanted to say we also use Gaga for rehabilitating the body. Yeah.
And we'll be doing a workshop after this talk, part of today's program. Very luckily, we're very lucky to have a workshop which will be running from 3 o'clock, is it? Whichever time it's happening. 4 o'clock. It's probably 3 o'clock now, isn't it? Which will be happening later, which obviously everybody is welcome to come and attend. If you're here, you're also welcome to be there.
And Gaga, it works for everybody, so it's open for, you don't need to have dance experience. It really is about listening to the body and tapping into your imagination.
And actually, and before I ask Melissa the same question about the body as this storehouse, I'd just like to say that I have come to the realization that we have a problem with the word dancer, maybe, which that the word dancer has connotations of skill or quality. And I would like to say that in this environment, I would invite anyone who dances to call themselves a dancer. I don't have much skill or technique, but I like to dance. Therefore, I will call myself a dancer. And I would invite all of you to do the same. Melissa, bring us the expertise. Tell us something, give us a nugget of info about what you know about the body and what it contains.
Oh yeah, well, there would be a lot to say about this, but I will try to limit it a little bit. Well, there were so many things that you both said that resonated with me. One of the most important things I think for me is this listening to the body, because I think that we live in a culture that constantly enhances the meaning of cognition over the body, over the information that our body gives us. And our body is such a great resource of, it can be very, very useful for decision making, for example. Like, if you base decisions on what you feel in your body, I think that you can make better decisions in life that are more connected to what you really want and feel. Because the body is also a container of emotions and our needs. So it's very important to be connected to your emotions and to know what needs you have in life. Yeah.
What kind of dancer are you?
What kind of dancer? I'm a private dancer, I think. Well, I recently started with Lindy Hop dancing. I really like that groove about it. And as also I have a long tradition of singing and I like jazz a lot, so this kind of fits. But I also like hip-hop dance and electronic dance, yeah.
Are there any people that you're aware of, I mean there probably are, who are working specifically with dance and music and mental health?
Pardon, the first.
Can you tell me about practitioners you're aware of who are working specifically with dance, music and mental health?
I couldn't tell you any names right now off my head, but I know that dance therapy, for example, is very common in clinics, mental health clinics, like psychosomatic clinics. So there's already a setting or a context where dance is used to release psychological problems, mental health problems as depression or trauma.
Of course, because there's the whole field of dance movement psychotherapy, which is relatively new. But I think, as far as I understand, is about using movement as a way of dealing with a problem, but also recognizing for the therapist that how someone moves tells you how they feel. If you're in a dance floor, on the dance floor, can you tell how people are feeling by how they're moving?
Oh, that's a very good question, because I think when I'm on the dance floor, I'm very self-centered in a way. I'm just, most of the time I have my eyes closed. But I think you could, I think everyone could see, get information from someone just observing movement. And it's even, maybe it's easier if you have your own experience of movement to maybe identify or encode what mood is going on in the other person.
Yeah, out to the shy dancers, out to the relaxed dancers. I think it's underappreciated how much information we release and absorb when we move to music. Alvin?
I wanted to also say, there's a sense in the dance floors, at least, when you open yourself up to be vulnerable with the music and how you receive the music and how it moves you and liberate you in a way. I think that also brings inspiration to the space of how other people can tap into it. So even though it can be so meditative and centered in, it can also create a lot of impact because of how much people can witness your process, for example. And I think that's when the dance floor can become more of like a communal way of supporting each other.
Can you give us an example of how you've seen that on the queer dance floors in Berlin in particular? This feeling of exchange, you're opening yourself up and you're receiving community.
Yes, so I come from the queer club scene, which is so beautiful because it's all about tapping into expressions and just like allowing these expressions to come out. And when you open yourself up to, to scream or to laugh or to yell or to just share expressions inside you that wants to come out, we celebrate it. We celebrate it with the body. We celebrate it by holding space for each other. There are moments in these spaces where we really feel like we're embracing what needs to come out, and whether you want to body roll your life out and shake your booty until the sun comes up, it has this essence of like, yes, liberate the space. We're here together to express that. Because when we witness someone opening themselves up to this experience, it also gives you permission. It allows you to find that within yourself and share. And
I have actually one other thing I want to ask you about this, because within Gaga, the movement language that you practice, as far as I understand, there's a concept of groove. Now, all of us might understand groove in a particular way. To me, groove is just, finding the groove in the music and responding to that with your body. Can you tell us about, what does groove mean in Gaga?
So in Gaga, we use groove, there's the internal rhythm, so the rhythm inside you. So how can you groove even in silence? So you're not a slave to maybe a music or a certain kind of environment, but just tapping into already the life inside you, in your system, your imagination, your fantasies, all of it can help you groove from the inside. And then how you can groove with the information around you. Maybe someone else's fantasy can help you groove. Maybe the environment, the space you're in, maybe the music can also bring more ways to groove in a rich way. So we groove in a way where we can use different kinds of information that already exist.
You know what you're making me think? So I live in London, and I met with my friend the other day who told me she'd been to an Amapiano club, South African dance music. She loves the music. She'd been out to various Amapiano raves in London and loved dancing to it. But this particular time, it was in the winter and it was cold, and everyone's wearing puffer jackets and the club was cold. It was maybe in a big space. And she just said, you just can't dance to Amapiano in the cold. You just can't. And it made me think, music made in South Africa, it's warm, the body is relaxed with the heat, maybe it's tense in other ways, but that you need a certain amount of warmth around you to be able to move in the way that Amapiano requires.
Right.
And you just can't do that in a cold London warehouse in December. which chimes with what you're saying about the information, and maybe there needs to be a match between the reality of your context, cold London warehouse, and what you expect your dancers to be able to do. Damon, I feel like you have something to offer us at this point.
Yeah, the area of groove is where my OCD lies.
Speak, please.
So,
speak.
So what I've noticed, and one of the points I wanted to bring up particularly in this discussion, is the importance of groove, but also understanding what it is that is making certain feelings. So, for instance, so I come from the funk era, and I remember certain of my favorite bands sounding a certain way. There would be this drummer, and he just had this certain feel, and it just like I had a physical reaction to it, and I'm like, what is happening? And in the 90s, when I started producing music for myself, and me trying to recreate those grooves, I found that it wasn't as easy as I thought, because I could sing it, I played it, the notes, but it's not the same thing. And I understood that the small micro shifts in timing with certain elements of the drum kit or the drum rhythms in relationship to the bass player. For instance, let's say the drummer drank a gallon of coffee and the bass player just woke up and they're playing together. There's a relationship that's happening between them that comes out through the music, and everybody feels it when these certain things happen. And I've been trying to find out what those certain things are, and I found a bunch of formulas for myself. And when I recreate them in the classrooms where I teach, and when the people hear what I'm hearing, they have this aha epiphany as well, and they also get the feeling. But maybe they didn't get the feeling until they were made aware. I'm like, okay, the backbeat, the snare, do you hear that that's earlier or that that's later? If something's rushing, there's this kind of like, it's surprising. And then when it's laid back in the pocket, it's another kind of thing. And it's very repeatable. You play certain songs and people will catch the vibe again and again. And a lot of the music that I love to play is, of course, from the 60s and 70s and 80s, and everybody gets the same vibe. So what is it that is happening in these sounds that people can universally relate to and have their own private moment exactly the same as we? I'm stuck in this area.
So this is so interesting, because this is where your expertise as a dancer and a music maker and an educator all feed into each other, and a club promoter as well. How regular is your night in? Thank you, Stockholm. Is it monthly that you do it?
Pardon me?
The party that you run.
Yeah, it's called the Rubber Band Funk Room. And
Okay.
Yeah.
The Rubber Band Funk Room.
Shameless plug commercial for myself.
But what I'm saying is, all these
Be there
things.
on
You know, you're a dancer, you're a music maker, you're a promoter, so you're creating spaces for people
Yes,
to
and
dance,
actually-
and an educator. So these things combined have given you those insights.
Yes, and
into groove.
exactly the area where I want to delve in musically, and when I put it in the club environment, people get it immediately. Like, and they're like, okay, this is what it is. Everybody just connects. So it's a very unifying thing if you're aware of what the elements are, definitely.
If we take it from another perspective, not from the music, but from the dancers, Are there certain, I want to talk about whether or not there are certain movements that just relate to certain emotions. And actually, I want to ask you about the dance styles, you and for Lindy Hop as well, that you two are professionally involved with, and you in a kind of doing it kind of view. Is there like an emotional landscape that your dance styles relate to? And can you tell me anything about how those emotional landscapes are translated into certain types of movement?
Yes.
Thank you. Please do.
So for me, so I've been dancing with my family. I thought everybody just danced. I didn't understand that later people decided to become a dancer or anything. I thought that this is something everybody just did. And so I had that dance that was always with me. But in the mid-'70s, I'm 10 years old, it's 1975, and I'm watching Soul Train. Is everybody familiar with Soul Train? Okay. And I'm watching The Lockers, and I'm like, I want to do this. It's a bit too complicated for a 10-year-old. And we're watching just these small glimpses of people. You couldn't quite catch it. Videos weren't common publicly at the time, so you couldn't rewind the tape. And I saw people doing the robot. And I thought that, okay, as a kid, my mind could understand, okay, try to look like a machine. This was more approachable for me. And both of these dances, the party sort of social dances and the sort of mechanical robot dances, developed on completely independent paths for me. And I never thought of combining them. But when I was a robot, I was very much in a character other than my own. And I realized that, okay, there's a dance that I'm doing for myself when no one's looking, the thing I do for myself, and then there's this other persona and character that I would put on when now I'm going to be the and that would be the dance movements and styles that I would develop to make people happy. So I would jump back and forth between the things that made me personally happy, which might not look so spectacular, I thought, and vice versa. So I juggled back and forth between these two things. And when someone told me, you know what, why don't you just do anything for your solo? Like, because I would make these really robotic, very non-expressive kind of dance solo. And my friends would say, but like, you have like this smile, you have this personality that doesn't look like you when, that's not the you we know. And I was like, okay. And I decided to try not to figure out what I was going to do and do a little bit of both. And it worked out that it worked well for me because it made me happy, and I got the reciprocation from the audience watching me, and I learned that it was okay to be myself. So this is something I'm relating a lot when you're telling me about Gaga, that it's, so yeah, there's very specific moments that I remember, okay, this is for me, this is for them, this is empowering, this is my community, this is the music that I feel safe to, this is where it worked, this is the place where I could do this, where I would have this reciprocating community to rely on, and yeah, you get hooked on it.
Yeah, I'm sure. So just for the kind of cultural context, you're talking about a moment in time where electric boogaloo, popping, locking, waving is beginning to emerge as distinct dance styles. And is that right?
For me, it's been around since the 60s, but I wasn't aware of it then.
So you were joining a lineage of dance styles and you were bringing your own flavor to it, and in doing so, that evolved the dance style.
Yes.
I mean, also, we can't not mention how important you've been in seeding those dance styles in Europe as well. So maybe before we move on, just perhaps you could just tell us a tiny bit about the differences or similarities in the way you saw people respond physically, gesturally to the music. between the US, where you were mostly in California, in San Francisco, Bay Area, right?
Yeah. Well, I was traveling all around the United States at the time.
Okay, so in the US and in Northern Europe in particular.
Well, what I noticed, for the most part, that people were trying to recreate these magic moments that had happened in movies. So I guess that, so I get to Scandinavia at the end of '85. So they've already seen Flashdance, I think was
what a feeling.
the start of it for Europe, perhaps. Flashdance, Breaking, and Beach Street. So all the clothes, everybody was trying to recreate these circumstances. So when they would have jams, people thought that you just sit in a circle and just wait for the magic to happen. But Americans know that jam is short for the word jamboree, which means party. So the fact that a little section of this movie, people were in a circle and people did solos in it, brought on a lot of anxiety for the people that were too afraid to go in. But they wanted to create the space where someone could do it. So it was strange. So I was like, no, loosen up. No, come on, let's all dance. And when you lose yourself, that's when it could happen. But when everybody's waiting for it to happen like this, it doesn't necessarily, make it happen.
It's interesting, you just used the word anxiety there, and I think there are a lot of people who love to dance and feel to dance, and there are a lot of people who are very hesitant. Either people who are in a situation where they want to dance and they're in a circle, or even people maybe more like you and I, or certainly like me, where sometimes you feel hesitant, like embarrassed, worried about not being good enough, just, kind of... So maybe, Melissa and Alvin, what can you tell us about what dancing can do for people who are kind of crippled by their anxiety and don't feel like they can do any movement or much movement at all?
Well, I think it can be a little bit confrontational for people with high anxiety levels, like an exposition therapy. But if someone with anxiety would try this out, I feel that, I think that anxiety levels could go down after a while, because anxiety is connected with a certain stiffness in the body. So you have mostly very tense shoulders, and the diaphragm isn't working a lot. Like, you try to not take so much space in the world, And so this is also a technique we have in psychotherapy that we call opposite action. It comes from behavioral psychology, and it's something that you do if you want to control your emotions, if you're feeling overwhelmed by an emotion. It sounds so simple, but it isn't. You just do the opposite. So if you're feeling anxiety and you're feeling very tense, then you could really go more into it if you would go even more tense. But you could do the opposite, and it would be like try to loosen up, and it doesn't have to feel right at the first moment. It's gonna feel like, oh, but I don't feel like that. I'm just doing it like artificially. Yeah, but when you keep doing it, then actually the effects come with time. Yeah.
And Alvin, have you seen people in your community who've, suffered from anxiety, maybe on a crippling level, and who have found a way to live with and through their anxiety through movement?
Yeah, actually, as a dancer myself, I'm super shy in social gatherings. Like I think dancers, we feel safe and comfortable on stage, but then when you go, so when I started clubbing, I was really in the back. I was just admiring everybody. I'm like, oh, I'm a dancer, I do this on stage type of thing. And the moment I start to work on opening myself up to be a little bit more vulnerable. Like, what can I learn from someone's expression that I can understand about myself? So I start to really connect with maybe a person that I really love the way they move. And from that communication, like, how can this exchange kind of enrich me or learn more about myself? So kind of like going beyond familiar limits, or going beyond a little bit about my mind, just like being in the moment and sharing a connection, or sharing their beautiful way of expressing, made me learn more about how I can open myself up to that. And then from there became kind of like, I became so addicted to the dance floor. And what can I learn about myself from you? So it starts to kind of like, this shyness and this nervousness and maybe the social anxiety starts to be transmuted in a way, transformed, when I start to understand that every piece of this person in this space can help me learn more about myself and how I relate to the world. So that became really juicy.
It's funny when you're saying that, I'm thinking, I mean, I may have mentioned Argentine tango once already, but I recently started doing it and just have this kind of current obsession with it, although I can't do it currently because of my knee. But I realized that actually in Argentine tango, my earnestness, because I sometimes can be a bit earnest, translated into intensity in like actually quite a powerful way. And I found that there was a part of myself which, you know, it's fine, suddenly really rose up and became very valuable in a different dance context, which was just a kind of funny feeling for me to observe. But sticking with this question of anxiety and worry a tiny minute longer, I wonder if you can tell us about the video that you posted recently of you and your mum in your car.
Yeah, so my mom was a disco queen back in the 80s, 90s, and she used to sneak from college and go to the clubs. So I guess that's where I got my hips from. And actually, when my mom got diagnosed with cancer, she was really dancing with disco music and going back to the memories of when she was in the clubs. And me, as a lover of a dance floor, this is my way of holding space and supporting her in that time. So we really bonded through club dancing.
No, I saw the video that you posted of you and your mum dancing in the car outside a hotel, and your caption was something like, "We're dealing with a worry by having a little car dance."
Yes.
Now, actually,
yes.
at this point, I have to say I didn't realize that your mum had a serious diagnosis. So I'm sorry for raising something
There was a few years ago.
Okay, so it's okay now.
Yes.
But it just struck me as like a lovely way to deal with a worrying moment. We all know what it's like to be outside the doctor's surgery or the hospital and you're worried. To deal with that by just having a little dance. And I also thought it was a lovely moment of relationship between you two, because you're actually not dancing together. If you imagine the scene, it's like a dash cam, your mum's driving, you're next to her, and then you're both just dancing yourself in the seat. You're over here somewhere, she's in her own little moment, and you are separate, but you're together. And I guess that's a feeling that you have in your community, and I guess, well, you probably all understand as well, right? Maybe tell us something about that.
I think there's also the power of rhythm, the power of like relating, you know, whatever it is in your heart, your worries, your anxiety, your shyness, like surrendering yourself to the rhythm and connecting through that groove, that rhythm, that soul, and gives already the platform to hold space for each other, you know, beyond words can say. And that, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I totally connect with what you're saying, and I was thinking of also what you said about this specific moments in music with when something happens or something changes, and everybody notices it. And so I feel this is a connection right here, because this is something when you're dancing and you feel something in music, and you see other people are feeling it too, it's such a huge moment of connection with other people. And this is for anxiety, could be really a very helpful moment to, to feel connected. And we need to feel connected to feel safe. So, because anxiety has a lot to do with feeling threatened by the environment. And yeah, I think the music is the bridge maybe to all the individuals having a same mindset and connecting to the music.
And actually, just before, Vivian, who's not here, DJ producer, as you probably know, made a piece of meditation music for Tara Brach, whose work some of you might be familiar with. And there's a Tara Brach line that I remember my friend telling me about: the body registers that other people are there. And there's something about your body knowing that other people are there with you, doing the same thing as you, which I think can maybe create a feeling of safety, as you're describing. Damon.
So far we've been mentioning anxiety and fear being bad things. And I've learned that it isn't always the case for myself and a lot of dancers that I talk to, because we know that these feelings are the things that may drive you to do something that would otherwise be uncomfortable, something to push you to this. It could be this, I want, but then finally you have the moment, and then it's this epiphany, you know? So without that resistance, then you don't feel that there's something. If everything was all just okay all the time, then I don't think that a lot of people in very harsh living circumstances would have these quality of living. And for instance, like in the disco days, they lived for the weekend because the work days were so so when it came time to party, they knew how to party. So there was a reason to allow yourself to go to these places. And I'm reflecting on in the gay community that I remember in the 80s, they were going through like a really hard time in the Bay Area. And their clubs, it was the most fantastic clubs I've ever seen in my life, you know, because the way they were partying, they were having a spiritual moment. Yeah, and everybody that had witnessed or felt one of these kind of spiritual moments, whether they have been in hardship or whether they weren't in hardship but happened to be in one of these clubs where this would happen, if you would just feel this energy, you want to get back. You're trying to define it, you're trying to recreate it. It's a very special thing. But I think a lot of the things that make these magic moments happen are the fear and the anxiety that you're played with. I'll give you a quick example. So there's the cipher, right? The circle. So in Scandinavia, a lot of trained dancers, this is their moment of anxiety. They don't want to freestyle, and it's like, no, don't make me, don't want to. But if you can trick them into these, and I'm very good at tricking people. And then once they're there, then it's like, oh, and they have so much fun, and they didn't know. And they can't believe they were, you know, and it happened, and they feel it. So I don't think that those great releases would have happened unless there was that fear and unsafeness boundary that was pressed through. So I think there's a relationship to those two things.
That's a very useful reminder that things are not good or bad, they just are. And we dance them out. Can someone tell me what time it is? Because I forgot to... Okay, then, 3:00 now. Okay, then. So we will go to some questions very shortly. Now I'm thinking, I'm going through the kind of like questions Rolodex in my head. Which ones I wanted to ask about this, but maybe there's not time. Okay, then. So as we wrap up then, maybe we can look forwards a bit to the kind of dance places that we create, the dance floors that we want to exist. Maybe, Melissa, you can tell us, like, what might a trauma-informed dance floor look like?
A transformative dance floor?
Trauma-informed.
Trauma-informed, okay.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's a very good question.
It might be a bit too difficult to just chuck it in right there.
Yeah, no.
Anything off the
It's
top
very
of your head.
interesting, but I have to like do this thinking. Well, trauma informed would of course mean that we're sensitive and observant of other people and very sensitive about how they feel and if we are crossing boundaries, of course. So I think this is a very important thing to feel safe, that you know that you can express yourself, but your surrounding will respect your boundary and you will also respect the boundary of other people. Also, trauma-informed would be to know that sometimes it's very difficult to see a person that is in a dissociative mood or state, because sometimes it appears like the person is just quiet. But this quietness, when it is a little bit more tense, could be a sign also that someone is experiencing a dissociation. And well, in this situation, it would be okay to ask the person if you can help or if she needs help, or if the person tells you that she or him or whoever needs space, then to respect it. What I have been experiencing lately is that a lot of clubs have, or festivals have, an awareness team. So if you're worried about someone, you observe someone and you're not quite sure, maybe person needs help, that you could go to someone professional maybe, or a little bit informed, that could help the person out.
Okay, that sounds lovely. Trauma-informed dance floors, please. And then maybe for you two, I'm interested in what you wish for, what you ask for from our collective dance floors, because all of us, whatever our age, whatever our ability, whatever our anything, we need somewhere to do these kind of things. So perhaps you could all suggest something either for individuals or collectively, or maybe something structural that you would love to see happening on our dance floors to make them really work for as many people as possible. What comes to mind?
For me, I feel like everybody who steps into the space of a dance floor has a powerful key to transform the space, has the key to make deep, deep impact to change someone's life, whether it's a stranger. I've met many, many strangers in my life in the dance floor who have made me feel so empowered and so open and so believing in humanity in a way, because of the amount of level and support a dance floor can have beyond words can say. That being said, if you look at dance floor grooving as a sacred bodywork practice of liberating yourself, maybe from a tough world or a tough environment, maybe hard conversations you had during the day, if you use that as a fuel to liberate yourself and open your body up, like a painful massage, it becomes so good after. If you use that as a way to dance it out, then it opens the space up and it helps people find that within themselves. And that creates, I feel, magic. So everyone plays an important role in the dance floor. Whether you are able to or not, you can play a big part of changing someone's life.
Yes, I have to say, yes. Damon, what are you gonna bless us with?
Yeah, I would say one thing that would be really nice on both sides, on both the organizational side and for the participants coming to an event, for the participants to find some music that they really love. Because we haven't talked so much about the music, but that is the road that these cars are driving on. So it all relates to to this music. So if you find some music that makes you so emotional, that's a key. The other key from the organizational side is right now everything is very niched. Is it a house night? Is it a hip hop night? And and I love all these forms of music, but I don't really want to listen to anything for 3 hours long. I think you could beat a dead horse. You can. I think that the DJs have to be responsible enough to play the things that they know will get a reaction, but also in being informative about something that they personally may like, that maybe they could put one of these songs in here, and to take risks, because the music, it has to change. It has to, whether it be styles or tempos or intensities or instruments, there has to be maybe a section, a 10 or 15 minute section of this or that, yeah, but there has to be enough different types of music that will make people happy to have the spread of different types of people to share the moment. It won't happen if you play hardcore hip hop. Well, maybe that is not the mood that everybody's in. It's not going to happen with any one thing too much. The trick is, how do you make a party? Well, you bring it. That's how you make it. So if you have a spread of different types of people and you have the music that caters to these, then you're going to have this social utopia that we're aiming for. It's not going to happen in one music genre. It's people that aren't familiar with it are going to feel a little bit too alienated. They may not catch it exactly. There has to be variety.
It's what I'm hearing you're saying is that it's a responsive relationship between the people making the music, the people DJing the music, the people dancing, and the people that make the space to understand what is needed and to, as you say, bring it. Before we go to questions, is there anyone else? Do any of you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I really like the idea that Joe had, actually, when we were preparing for the panel. And he said something I never thought about it. How about we start a club night with a meditation? Like, everyone can participate who wants. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's cool. It's like connecting two worlds that actually are already connected. But we never think of them like that.
I mean, I think actually there's a room for things that happen before the club. So, for example, in a lot of Latin styles, you might have a practica before you have your dance. Or in house dance, you'll often have, or in house clubs, you'll often have a little class before you have the party. And I feel like the parts of club culture that don't have that tradition or that lineage might do something with between 7 and 9 p.m. or like 8 and 10 p.m. or in Berlin, midnight to 1 a.m. And what are those things? Maybe they're workshops, maybe they're talks, maybe they're meditations, maybe they're practicas, maybe they're activism, places where people can come and collectively organize. I don't know, but I do think that this idea has something in it. There's a before the club that we could do a bit more with. I have to also mention here, there's a magazine in the UK called Dance Policy, started by a 24-year-old from Manchester in the north. And he said to me the other day, I'm not even sure if club is the right word for the places that I really love. And maybe the word club, we need to find a new word for the places we're talking about, which is where people can go and do workshops and meet and organize and dance and do lots of other things and then have a jamboree. Okay then, so shall we pause our part of the conversation and see what the rest of the people in the room have to offer or ask? I don't know, are we sharing a microphone around? Okay then. So if you don't mind to wait for the microphone, that would be helpful. There's a microphone. Oh yeah. Check. Okay, because then it means that everyone can hear it and also other people can hear it if they watch back. So who would like to, does anyone I know it's not easy being first, but does anyone have anything they'd like to ask or share or
Now's your chance.
Suggest? I know someone's got some thoughts in their head. Maybe not.
If you're feeling a little anxious, then maybe you should move before you start talking.
Alvin, does your workshop start here? Okay then, so maybe I'll double check that nobody really... Oh yeah, go ahead, please. Thank you for being first and for waiting for the mic.
So, hey, what I was thinking about was, so for the clubs that are the places that we want for dancing and for partying, maybe there's another element to it that has to do with the space, literally with the space, and with different thresholds of being near the action. Because when we're talking about mental health, there might be certain thresholds or obstacles, and there tends to be a need for withdrawal or a retreat somewhere. I think for me that would be a suggestion. What do you think about how is a space? What's the layout? What are the different areas?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that observation, because it's very important and also so relevant for so many people. So thank you.
Remember we were talking about bass?
Yes. Damon has something to say, but is anyone lined up to ask the next question? Okay, Damon can speak and then someone else can comment something.
We were talking a little bit about bass, and I love extreme amounts of bass.
Me too.
This is where I have my magic moment, but I know that it's scary and quite an emotional thing if you're not used to it. So about you saying that there'd be like an area where it isn't as intense is brilliant, because you have to warm up to it if you're not used to it. Absolutely. It's brilliant.
I have to say, I'll come to you in a second, but I distinctly remember being at a sound clash between a crew of dubstep people, DMZ, this was like probably 2007 or 8, metalheads, kind of drum and bass originators. And it was all, it was like, it was very like, just what I needed. But I do remember seeing someone running out of the crowd going, oh my God, this is going to give me a heart attack. Like particularly the bass had dropped particularly hard at that moment. And I recognized then that she and I were having a very different experience.
Yeah, I have colleagues in the ambient scene who always question like why our clubs always have just a techno and house floor, and in Berlin, what about a meditative space, a chill out space, like where ambient music can be played, something softer, a tone where you can really, really breathe and relax, and yeah.
Yeah, or like some cumbia, like where you can just, the beautiful kind of cumbia dancing that people do. I think there's definitely room to bring some musics which are kind of seen as a bit folkloric maybe into a club situation and to jamboree with them. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions, observations? Yes. Oh, wait a sec, Mike. Well, it's just coming to you.
Can I speak of Germany or English?
That's fine for me.
If someone will translate for me.
Yeah, you can. German is fine.
Thank you.
We'll translate.
Ist es normal, also bei mir in der Familie ist es so, ich tanze immer zu Hause, aber es ist nie so, man tanzt so direkt in der Familie, und ich habe eben gehört, wie du gesagt hast, bei euch ist es normal so, dass ihr in der Familie auch mal direkt miteinander tanzt. Und woher kommt das Ganze? Kommt das eher so von den Freunden, so die einen einladen in der Familie, oder ist es direkt Familie, die in der Familie direkt miteinander tanzt? So, das war so meine Frage.
Yeah, so
Dankeschön.
he's asking if, you told that your first dance experience was with your family in a familiar space, and he's referring to his own experiences of dancing that were more, I think, alone in a space, not with the family members. And was it more like, did it happen when you were with friends, like invited to a party, or were you like really at home and dancing with your parents, or siblings?
Both. For me, what happened was once I understood where I wanted to go, then I had to prepare myself. So within the preparation, I was alone trying to figure out how to look like James Brown. So and then I would try it out, in the crowds. So there was a bit of both, but a lot of alone labbing lots and lots of before I would have the self-confidence to try things out in a crowd.
And perhaps, thank you, perhaps additionally to that, when you're talking about household parties, can you just, because maybe not everybody would be aware of the kind of culture of intergenerational front room parties, maybe from the part of the States, or just from your demographic experience?
Let me see. Late 60s, early 70s in California, most households had a record player, and your parents had records, and their friends would have records, and they would come over and play these records and drink and scream and laugh. And so it became a very loud, loving sort of circumstance. So exactly at the same time, there's the whole discotheque movement. So I don't know why a lot of people don't say discotheque anymore. But of course, the clubs we're talking about, there's a parallel also happening within the discotheques. At this time, for me, this is right at the tail end of the civil rights movement. So there's a lot of pride and self-awareness and uplifting sort of messages that are happening in the music that is making the people feel empowered. And when you see it and hear it, you get a definite reference in your mind. So many decades later in clubs, I would still see the ripples of these waves that had happened during the sort of soul and funk movement.
Dance with your families, people. Okay then, so I think we have no more questions unless anyone wants to make themselves known. Feel free to come and have a chat with us afterwards if you want to. And please stick around for the dance, what are we calling it?
Gaga workshop.
Okay, I was going to say class, workshop.
A Gaga class.
Okay, Gaga class. And for the music afterwards. Thank you very much to DJ Moses Joseph, Johannes, Joe from ZSA ZSA, for inviting us, and thank you very much for coming on this very warm day to come and listen to us talking about this. Thank you very much. And thank you, panelists. Thank you.